Hey, how's it guys? In this tutorial, welcome to learn how to web script Zillow's website using Playwright in Python. So Zillow is probably the largest real estate website. And if you're into web scraping, then you probably know that we cannot simply script the website with the simple requests module. And the reason being is because some of the contents are rendered via JavaScript. So that's why Playwright can be a pretty good tool to script Zillow's website's content. Now, before we dive into the tutorial, let's look at the target page that I want to scrape. Now, here I'm on Zillow's homepage. Now, let's say I want to scrape Chicago's real estate listings. Now, here I'm going to insert a zip code belong to a Chicago region. And it's giving me the address. Give me a second. All right, so I can enter the address, neighborhood, city, or zip code, and that's what I did. Okay, let's try a different one. Let's do 60657. Okay, that should be fine. So that gives me 94 results. And how many pages? 3 pages. And I believe that the max is 20 pages. Now right here, all these listings are my target. So I want to use Playwright to simply download this section here as a separate HTML page. Now, if we look at this page here, we actually have 2 elements. The element on the left is the Google Maps element, in which we want to ignore. Then we have the element section on the right, which return the property listings. And it's going to be my target. Now, the reason why we cannot use the standard requests library to download the page to return all the listings is because if we scroll down, the website is actually rendering additional contents as we scroll down the listings. So if you try to save the page as a regular HTML page, then we notice that a lot of listings are missing. And that's the reason why, because there are a JavaScript function in the background that load the additional contents or additional listings. So one of the tasks that we need to perform using Playwright is we need to control the scroll here to scroll additional contents until every single items are loaded. And that's basically the overall scope of this exercise. Now launch your terminal and let's install the Playwright Python package. To install Playwright, we'll type the command pip install Playwright and enter. I'm going to divide this tutorial into 2 parts. First part is going to download the HTML pages. In this case, that's what we call caching. And second part is going to be using Beautiful Soup to script information such as price, address, and properties information like how many bedroom, bathroom, and the square size of the property. Something very beginner friendly. Now here, actually let me go ahead and also install Beautiful Soup. So we can use the command pip install Beautiful Soup 4. Enter. Now let's create a Python script, and I'll name the script Zillow HTML download.py. Alright, so let me go ahead and launch my VS Code. To start, I'm going to import my modules and increase the font size. So for the first part, which is to download the HTML pages, I'm going to use 2 libraries, the type module and from Playwright.sync API. I'm going to import the sync Playwright function. Now let's go ahead and create a Playwright object we can use the sync playwright function .start to initiate the Playwright instance. And you can sync Playwright as a browser manager that controls multiple browser drivers. Now we need to create a browser object to control the browser. So from Playwright, we can choose which browser we want to use. In this case, I'm going to use Chrome. .launch to create instance of a browser object. Now here we need to set the headless mode to false, meaning that I want to actually launch the browser. Now this argument here, disable blank features automation control. This argument here basically make the browser appear less like automated or control the environment. And once we create the browser object, we want to create a new tab. But in this case, I want to create a new context object. Now in Playwright, a context object is an isolated environment that does not share any cookie or any user data file from other tabs. And we can create a new context object using browser.newContext method. And here we need to enable the JavaScript. Then we're going to set the user agent. Now I want to go back to the website. Right, so let's go to page 2. And because here we want to get the full browser address, or not browser address, the full URL address that tied to each page. Right, so I'm going to copy this link here and I'll create a new tab. Now, I'm not going into too much detail on how to examine the URL, but basically from the API endpoint, this is all you need. So we have the base URL followed by the query. In this case, will be city name, state code, and the zip code. And this will be page number. Now going back to the main script. So here I'm going to insert my variables to specify the city name. And here, if your city has a space in between, then we need to replace the space with a dash. The state code and the zip code. Now to download the page individually, here I'm going to insert a function. So this is a function that I use for my own personal project. So here, let me do this. I'm actually going to create a folder to store the HTML files. Right, so let's name this as HTML exports. Now copy the folder path, actually not folder path, folder name. And it's going to be the location where I want to save the files. And it's going to be the file name or the file prefix. Let's name this as Zillow, followed by city name, state code, and the zip code, and the page number. Now let's examine the function here. So the function is called download Zillow page. And this function takes the page object and the URL. So here a page is simply a new tab. So right here, if I create another tab, and that's a new page, a different page. Now in Playwright, we can create a page using different methods. We can create a page directly using the browser, or we can create a new page using the context object. Now any page object you created, the page object is going to inherit the properties from the parent context. And some of the things that the page object might get inherited can be cookies, user data, user agent, and some other properties. Now here I'm actually going to script the first 3 pages. So I can say for page number in range 1 to 4. And let me take a look, just to make sure that we have more than, we only have 3 pages, so which is perfect. Right, let me put a break right here. I need to put this on the top. Now going back to the function, let me just quickly explain the function. So here for iron range, so this is the number of attempts. So sometimes the bot detection may get triggered. In this case, if that happens, my condition here, and here the condition should be modified. Should be based on, here, let's look at the page title. Right, so for new listings, so the page title is going to be the zip code. So we can change this to starts with 60657. So what's saying that if the title does not start with the zip code, rather something else, then we know that we run into the bot detection or verification. And we take out the print statement. Then I want to close the page object and wait 5 seconds and create a new page using the browser object. And make sure that we enable the JavaScript. Then continue. The print statements are for testing. And let me delete the print statements. Then I want to locate the element, which is this element here, this element block. And here's the expect query to locate this element here. Then I want to scroll 12 times. Oh, I forgot to mention. So this statement here is going to create a reference to this element here that contains all the listings. Then we're going to store the element as target element. Then I want to scroll the page 12 times. Each time I'm going to scroll by 500. And between each scroll, I'm going to pause for 0.5 seconds. Then I'm going to sleep for 2 seconds. And we actually don't need this. This is actually redundant. Now, this loop here is going to render all the listings until it reaches to the end of the element here. Then we're going to save the element block as an individual HTML file. So we can use wait open as F. Then we're going to take the target element. Then we're going to render the HTML source code and save that as a HTML page. And here I'm going to print the page followed by the page number is downloaded. Then X out the function. Right, so I was looking at my notes. I noticed that I made a mistake. We actually don't need the context object here. This is actually not needed. Now instead, I'm going to use browser object, that new page, to create a new page object. And here I need to set the JavaScript to enable. Then we're going to construct the URL. Then we're going to insert if condition. So here I'm saying that run this function, and I'll pass the page object and the URL where the listings are located. Now after after 3 attempts, and if we run into exception or if we're not getting the content back, then that means that we are running into some sort of issues. This can be the website's security may block our requests, or maybe a couple other reasons. If that does happen, then I want to raise an exception and I want to manually troubleshoot the issue. But if the if condition is not met, then that means that we have successfully downloaded the page. Then I want to close the page object, delay for 3 seconds, then go to the next page. And once we download the pages, we need to close the browser, as well as terminating the Playwright instance. And we can use playwright.stop to kill the session. Now, this is the whole script, something to get you started. Alright, so here I'm going to run the script and to see if that runs. Let me go into HTML export. Right, so it launches the page. Now it's going down the page all the way to the end, as you can see on the screen here. And it saves the page, so that's page 1. Now, because page 3 does not have as many listings as page 1 and page 2, so the function here is going to just keep continuing scroll the page, even though there's nothing left to scroll. But that does not impact what I want to do here, which is to download the HTML pages for the listings. Now, if I take one of the file, and if we take a look, now this is going to look a little bit weird, and that's because this page containing just the static content from the from the page itself. In this case, will be just an element section. But if we look at the listings, let's say I want to make sure that I'm capturing all the listings. In page 3, I have this one here, 822 West Eldon Avenue. Alright, so I'm going to copy the address. Actually, let me do this. I'm going to just do a search. 822 West Eldon Avenue. Right here. It's really hard to see because there's a picture in the background. But when we use Beautiful Soup to examine the HTML source code, we'll be able to capture all the contents on this page. And that'll be for part 2 of the tutorial. Alright, so this is going to be everything I'm going to cover for part 1 of the Zillow's web scraping tutorial. And I hope you guys find this tutorial useful. And feel free to leave your question or your feedback in the comment section below, and I'll see you in part 2. Bye bye.